A woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. Virginia Woolf. Hey guys, today's topic of the video is going to be about one of the most important personality and a literary personality and a feminist in history of world and history of English and Irish literature, and she is Virginia Woolf. In this video, we'll be discussing the introduction, life, um, important was literary style, stream of consciousness, interior monologue, and her feminism. So let's start. But before starting, I will suggest you to subscribe to this channel and also follow me on Instagram so that you can get all the literary updates from there. So starting with the introduction of Virginia Woolf, she was an English writer. She was one of the best modernist and feminist writer in English history. She used her writings to bring educational reforms in society. She gained her status as an icon in 1970s during the third wave of feminism. Discussing her early life and later life, she was born on the January 25 in 1882 in South Kensington, London, which is in England. Her full name was Adeline Virginia Stephen. She was the third of the four children born to Julia Princess Stephen and her husband Leslie. Virginia's parents were fixtures on the London literary and intellectual scenes, and she grew up in a house full of books. And it is said that was the time she developed love and affection for the books. In 1891, Leslie and Stephen's mentally disabled daughter from his previous marriage was sent to live in an institution at the age of 21. In 1895, her mother died, and that was Virginia's first major depressive episode. In 1897, her first sister died, who was Stella Duck, who has been running the Stephens household since the death of their mother in 1895. Also died. In 1904, her father died, and Leslie Stephen died of stomach cancer, and the loss of her father caused her to have a major mental breakdown, which led her to try to commit suicide. She tried to jump out of a window, and she was institutionalized. Following their father's death. The Stephens children sold their childhood home and bought a home together in Bloomsbury household neighborhood in London. It is said that she tried to commit suicide many times, just like Sylvia Plath and Emily Dickinson, and that was her first episode of suicide. But she failed. In 1905, at the age of 23, she began her professional writing career as a contributor to the Times literary supplement. She also took on several jobs of the sort available to women at the time, such as teaching and reading to elderly ladies. In 1906, the Stephens traveled through Greece. Vanessa and Toby became sick with typhoid fever. Vanessa discovered, but Toby, her brother, died at the age of 26. Always close to her husband, although always close to her siblings, she was heartbroken. In 1907, her sister Vanessa married to the art critic Clive Bell. Virginia and her brother Adrian shared a home near the Bell's house. In 1910, a group of writers, artists, and intellectuals that eventually included Virginia Woolf, novelist, that contains Virginia Woolf herself, the novelist E.M. Foster, and economics John Maynard Keynes, and other among its members began meeting informally at the Bells home and found the Bloomsbury Group. Uh, on August 10, 1912, Virginia Stephen married a Jewish intellect who had served in the Foreign Service, and the couple enjoyed a happy life. If unconventional marriage has lasted, but their unconventional marriage was lasted until her death. On August 4, 1914, Great Britain entered World War I. Most members of the Bloomsbury Group were pacifists, and none of men were enlisted in the war. In 1915, her first novel, The Voyage Out, was published. She has completed it a year earlier, but publication was delayed by the war and Woolf's lingering depression. So the person she married in the previous, which I have discussed there, that was actually Leonard Woolf. And Leonard Woolf was a Jew, and so it was an unconventional marriage. Virginia Woolf was Christian and Leonard was Jew, so it was unconventional marriage but full of love. In 1917, the Wolfs published a used printing press, establishing the Hogarth press in the basement of their home. Their basement project allowed Virginia to publish her experimental fiction. Hogarth moved into a respected publication house, putting out works from authors like Catherine Mansfield, T.S. Eliot, and Sigmund Freud. In 1919, Virginia and her husband published Monk's House. Her husband was Leonard Woolf. An 18th century cottage located in the countryside village of Rodmell in England. They would maintain the house until Leonard's death. In 1922, Virginia published Jacob's Room, a novel which was based on her brother Thoby's death. In this same year, she met Vita Sackville West. She was a married writer. The two women began a love affair with Leonard Woolf's knowledge and permission, but that lasted through the 1920s. After their romantic relationship ended, she remained close friend until Leonard Woolf's death. In 1924, the Wolves moved to Bloomsbury, which was a bohemian neighborhood of London. The Bloomsbury Group continued to meet informally. In 1934, Virginia Woolf's half-brother George, from his mother's previous marriage, also died. On July 18, 1937, Virginia's nephew Julian, the elder son of Vanessa and Cliff, was killed while driving an ambulance in the Spanish Civil War. On September 18, 1937, Virginia's half-brother Gerald Duckworth was died in Milan, Italy. So there are theories about her suicide. So in this particular topic, I will also cover the suicide and death of Virginia Woolf. So here it starts. On 3 March 1939, Great Britain declared a war on Germany, making England's entry into World War II. Fearing Nazis' persecution due to Leonard's Jewish ethnicity, the Wolves made plan to commit suicide if England is invaded. They left their home in London and moved out to Monk's house at Rodmell, where they hoped to be safer. In 1940s, the Wolves' London home and the Hogarth Press offices were destroyed by the Blitz, which was a German campaign of terror bombing over the city. So their papers and printing press was salvaged and brought to their country home in Rodmell. Virginia is working on a novel but is struggling with her mind, a stress of her work, and the war brings on another serious bout of depression to her. On March 28, 1941, convinced that she will not recover from her current battle with mental illness, she fills the pocket of her coats with stones and drowned herself into the Ouse River near Monk's house. Her body was discovered 3 year weeks later. Her husband chose to have the body cremated and the ashes was scattered at the monk's house. So that was all about her death. Moving to her literary works in 1915. Her first novel, The Voyagers, was published in 1919, Night and Day. In 1922, Jacob's Room was published. In 1925, Mrs. Dalloway was published. In 1927, her Lighthouse to the Lighthouse was published, and it was definitely the best-selling, surpassing sale of all her other books. And in 1928, her novel Orlando, an inspiration, a book inspired by Rita Sequel-West, with whom she had a romantic affair, was published in 1929. She published A Room of One's Own, of which I have shared a quote in the start of this video. In 1931, she published her most conceptually challenging novel, The Waves. The Years was published in 1937. The Three Genius was published in 1938. Between the Acts was published in 1941 posthumously. Moving towards her literary style, Virginia Woolf uses stylistic features like interior monologue and stream of consciousness. She uses the techniques of interior monologue to distinguish between between the public exterior and the private interior. She was one of the pioneers of the text of the technique, the stream of consciousness. Sorry, I'm getting a little mismanagement there. So one of the Woolf's most well-known example of a stream of consciousness is in her novel To the Lighthouse. Virginia Woolf makes her reader stare into the world she created, but do not have any illusion this world is staring back at you. Moving towards the topic if Virginia Woolf was a feminist and to what extent she was a feminist. She is the first writer who introduced individualization in feminist society. She was the first writer who has written literature in true feminist sense. She had a brilliant mind which goes beyond every convention and creates no distinction between male and females. Her vision was based on the emancipation and independence of men and women. So she wanted to. So her vision was based on emancipation and independence of women, just as men. And she wanted every woman to act against unbearable conventions of society and everything. She wanted education for women and wanted them to have an opinion and expression. In her novel, A Room of One's Own, she wanted women to write independently and do things independently just like men. In her essays, Three Geniuses, she described how women can prevent war when they are excluded from education, the profession, and the public spheres. Three Geniuses is a relatively neglected work of hers that deserves greater attention as it's central to an understanding of Woolf's feminism. It's the basis of her feminist theory. Her linking of the private and the public and how the structures of patriarchal society led to militarism is just a challenging argument for the world of today. So thanks for watching. I hope you like or dislike this video. Also comment in the comment box for further inquiry and do subscribe to this channel.